Hello, and welcome to another episode of Who Died with Pete and Alex. It's your weekly guide to some of the famous, infamous, and noteworthy figures who have passed on to another plane the week of April 26th to May 2nd, 2023. That's if you're sticking with us, last week we did our first episode. This is our second episode covering just the likes of people who have passed away in the last week. So hopefully you get the idea. And Alex, I think you have our first honoree.
Yes, the first person we want to mention is Jerry Springer.
Yes.
The famous American talk show host and sometimes politician, born February 13th, 1944. He left us on April 27th, 2023. Most of the people listening to this probably know who Jerry Springer is, so I don't think we need too much of an introduction. I was shocked to see that the Jerry Springer Show, his titular talk show, ran from 1991 to 2018. I had no idea it was still going in 2018. It's crazy.
Yeah. But it's what was it on network TV this whole time too? It didn't.
I think it was. I think it was syndicated most of the time.
Syndicated,
show up on your. Before doing his talk show, of course, he was the mayor of Cincinnati, Ohio, and after that, he became a local news anchor, and that kind of segued into more of a broadcasting career. The Jerry Springer Show originally started off as a political talk show addressing hardcore issues and stuff, and not surprisingly, no one watched that, so he's decided to shake things up a bit by turning it into a circus.
Yeah.
And tremendously popular show in its time. There was a time where you could go, Jerry, 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 and everyone would know what you were talking about.
Right.
And so I thought you might like this, Pete. After, in 2014, he started doing some specials for the WWE. So you wrestling fanatics should go check that out to see. I don't know if it's like greatest hits, if it's the kind of thing where they have two guys on and they fight each other. We don't know.
Spring of the Ring? I don't know. What
Jerry Ringer.
There you
go. So yes, first honoree, Jerry Springer.
I don't want to take away from the our first honoree this week, the dearly departed Mr. Springer. But I was very much in the Richard Bay Show camp, 9 Broadcast Plaza into Richard Bay Show, which I felt was more of obviously Morton Downey Jr. kind of that kind of thing led into.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Richard Bay Show laid a lot of groundwork here.
The Richard Bay Show was sort of it walked so Jerry Springer could run.
Yeah. But Jerry Springer definitely culturally important. And I know there was some I feel like their famously lax background checking, their vetting process was because I think I know some people who, not friends of mine but friends of friends, would like just go make up a story and go be on Jerry Springer every once in a while,
as guests?
That kind of a thing. Yeah, they'd make up some crazy and some of them made it to air, but they'd just make up a story and go like kind of pitch it to be on Jerry Springer, and I think the producers were just kind of like, all right, whatever, you say so.
That really rocks the foundation of my faith in the Jerry Springer Show.
I'm sorry to do that to you.
Oh well.
Well,
so moving on from Jerry Springer, what's next on the roll call of passers?
I wanted to give a posthumous tip of the cap to Dick Groat.
Dick Groat
passed away on April 27th of this year at age 92. He was born November 1930. And Dick Groat, All-American college basketball player for Duke, played about half a season for the Fort Wayne Pistons, which blew my mind a little bit because the Detroit Pistons is one of the perfect team names. It makes sense. It's like, it's localized.
Yeah.
But it turns out I learned a little bit. that the Pistons were the Fort Wayne Pistons, where a basketball team started. They were owned by the company that made all the Pistons for like everything, pretty much. That was based in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Huh.
And then as the NBA grew, they were like, well, Fort Wayne is too small of a town for a team like this, and so they moved them to the logical place, which was Detroit. So it's a good synergy there. But
So Fort Wayne was the Richard Bay of Piston teams.
Exactly. There you go. And he
Theme of
played
the
about half a season for the Fort Wayne Pistons in the NBA, and then left to enlist in the Korean War. But that is not what makes it notable. The notable thing is that in addition to that, he also happened to be an 8-time All-Star shortstop and 2-time World Series champion in Major League Baseball.
Wow.
He's one of only 13 people ever to play both basketball and baseball at the professional level.
Bo Jackson? Or was he a football player?
That was football. A lot. There's more as these things have gone on. I think it's football and baseball are the ones that are schedule-wise the most doable.
That makes sense.
Because with the winter sports, there's a little bit of overlap with the other sports, whereas baseball and football are kind of more or less. Only the first couple of football games of the season might intersect with the baseball end of the baseball season.
But Dick Groat, he did basketball and baseball.
Dick Groat, basketball and baseball. He was actually, college basketball player, signed up to play. I think he was drafted and went to play baseball. Then was doing both. Actually, I think while he was in college, he was also. So I think he was doing basically three things. He was in college and then was playing in the summer. Was playing baseball.
Are we sure that Dick Groat was not 3 different people? Like triplets pretending to be one person or something?
I'm not even mentioning his later golf career.
Wow.
But he was in college playing basketball. I think started playing baseball in the summer, then started playing pro basketball. But during that first season, he enlisted. He saw the writing on the wall with the military action in Korea. And was like, well, I'm going to get drafted, so let me just enlist now so that when my term is up, it's in time for spring training 2 years from now for baseball. Because he was much, like his baseball career was doing much better than his basketball career at first.
Mm-hmm.
And so he foresaw that. He was like, let me do this on my terms.
Yeah.
Signed up in the middle of the season, so only played half that season for the Pistons. And was doing well on the Pistons. It wasn't like a scrub, you know what I mean? He was. I think he might have led the team in some categories when he left. But then he left, went to the war. When he came back, the manager of the Pirates was just like, "Hey, if you're coming back, you're not playing basketball. You're just doing baseball. Otherwise, there were financial incentives to make it. So they're like, look, just stick with baseball." And he liked playing basketball, but it made it worth his while to play baseball, and it paid off because he ended up being an 8-time All-Star shortstop, like I said, and won the World Series twice with the Pirates, I believe.
Yeah, back then also, I imagine baseball was a much more popular. Basketball was still not really, like now basketball is very popular, but I feel like in the 50s it wasn't quite the same. Baseball, been America's pastime since, the 20s.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Yeah, that was always going to take precedence. But,
interestingly... a player.
Yeah.
You're not going to focus on that.
In Canada, maybe.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I had just the other day looked up the list of 13 players who had played both basketball and baseball because I was looking up. This is a long, complicated story, but hey, that's what we're here for. My kids had gotten there's some NBA Kinder eggs, Kinder eggs, the little Kinder Joy, whatever, the little chocolate things that have a little toy inside.
I thought those were outlawed in America.
And they do them differently here now. They put the toy in a separate compartment.
Okay.
And the toys inside were NBA mascots.
Fun.
And they assembled their little toys, and they come to me asking me who are these? And I knew one of them off the top of my head was Stuff, the Magic Dragon, who's the Orlando Magic's mascot.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't quite, even though it's one of my local teams, didn't know the other one. Turns out it's semi-recent. It's Chuck Condor, who is the LA Clippers mascot.
Is that supposed to be like
And
a pun on Chuck Connors?
That's what I thought. And I was like, why would it be Chuck Connors? He was like an actor. And then I looked it up. Turns out he was also a basketball player.
Huh.
And he played baseball and basketball. And so I was like, oh, so Chuck Connors is one of the 13, I believe.
Wow. And he was a movie star.
Or I got to him via that. I'm pretty sure I should have written this down in my notes, but Chuck Connors led me to this list of 13 people who had played both basketball and baseball professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, oh, all right, so maybe that is a pun on Chuck Connors. I don't know. He's also, I think, in cahoots with Chuck Taylor, the shoes, because he wears Chucks, and it's a big deal. The mascot, not Chuck Connors.
Okay.
And so organically, I happened to look at this page, and I was reading a little bit about Dick Groat last week, and then boom, here he is, an honoree this week. So
wow. So you'll have to let us know who you're reading about this week, so we can prepare ourselves for their untimely passing.
Sorry. But yes, that's so Dick Groat, all-star athlete across the board.
Goodbye,
funny man.
And let's also say goodbye, funny man, to folk rock singer Gordon Lightfoot, the Canadian legend. Are you familiar with Mr. Lightfoot? You've probably heard his music, even if you don't know that you've heard it.
Yeah, I know the name, but I could not tell you which songs were his.
Here in America, his three biggest hits were a song called Sundown, another song called If You Could Read My Mind. That's a popular soft rock song. And
that's not the man.
No.
Can You Read My Mind? Okay.
And probably the song he is best known for, what has been referred to as his finest song, the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, which was a sort of, I know you've mentioned that sea shanties are gaining in popularity at the moment, so maybe the kids might get into it.
They might already be over. They might already be
passé. Anyway, the song
if we know about it, it's passé.
Yeah, it's true. If it's already filtered up to the old people, then
yeah.
Bob Dylan referred to, he said he loved Gordon Lightfoot. He said, I can't think of any Gordon Lightfoot song that I don't like. And
not love, like,
well, still, it's pretty good.
Yeah, still, that's good.
No song you don't like. That's pretty high praise.
No skips.
Yeah. So a big influence on Gordon Lightfoot was Stephen Foster, mid-19th century music composer, and that's interesting hearing someone in the relatively modern age referring to someone from 100 years ago.
I'm gonna pick out somebody from the early 20th century to be kind of to model myself after more. I'm gonna be like, one of my big influences is. I mean, I guess it's not that, it's not that unusual. Like, even if I'm picking people from my youth or childhood, it's going to end up being like, ancient history to a lot of people. The fact that it's in the 20th century at all,
Yeah, exactly. I guess you also would run into problems because most of the people from the earliest 20th century and 19th century would probably have some political views that now people would be like, that's your big influence. So,
yeah.
Anywho, so some notes on the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's my personal favorite Gordon Lightfoot song. I like Gordon Lightfoot in general. I was surprised how much I like him. It's good, kind of, it's like mellow folk rock. And he has a distinctive voice. But anyway, the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. The Edmund Fitzgerald is a real sailing ship that sunk in Lake Michigan in 1975. And 1976, less than a year after the ship sank, Gordon Lightfoot came out with a song and tried to make it as accurate as he could. But at the time, the ship, which was lost, they didn't know the details of what had happened. So,
have they found out? It's odd for me to think of a shipwreck in a lake, but I know that makes sense. Lakes are huge, but
yeah.
Me thinking a shipwreck in a lake. That's
yeah. It seems like people could just swim from the shore and pull the people in, but these lakes are pretty great. So.
Yeah. So I hear.
But so eventually they did find the ship, and but Gordon Lightfoot kept up with the information that was being learned, and when he performed it live, he would update the song to more accurately reflect what was going on. I had to respect that historical persnickety.
Hope you're taking notes, one Mr. William Joel.
And finally, the comedian Richard Janney said that the record of the Edmund Fitzgerald is the perfect song to play when you want guests to leave a party. So Gordon Lightfoot left our party May 1st, 2023.
Oh, so he's sailing off on that great shipwreck in the sky? I don't know. That makes it sound kind of daunting.
Yes.
Well, now, do you think he would he show up on the Yacht Rock channel that I listen to from time to time? Is that or is it a little too folksy?
I don't know. I mean, it is a song about a ship, so I don't know if would that make it more likely to be.
Does it get in on a technicality? We'll have to find out.
To see. I think he might be a little mellow for Yacht Rock. I know some Yacht Rock is mellow, but it's mellow in a like cool, seductive kind of way, not in a sitting around a campfire strumming a. He has a lot of songs about nature, Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh, okay.
So
who's
up next, Pete?
For my next honoree, I'm going to return to the Korean War, in a sense. And I'm going to tip my hat to, also on May the 1st, age 79 years old, the actress Eileen Saki passed away. She was born November 18th, 1943 in Japan. And we know of her because she was the last of 3 actresses to play Rosie, the proprietor of Rosie's Bar in the television series MASH. She was not only the last, but the longest tenured. She did 8 episodes as Rosie. And there were 2 other actresses who each did 2 episodes each. Oddly, in so Eileen Saki also played Korean Woman in one episode, I think it was Bug Out, which is a famous episode. And in that episode, one of the other actors played Rosie. And so she was on playing Korean Woman and then came back as Rosie.
She was like, that's the job I want.
Right. And then I think these other actors might have come back as other characters later on too, but also notably, I think Alan Alda pointed out that he retconned it in then the actual Rosie's Bar, or the one that is based on, from people's stories of having been in the action in Korea. There was an actual place like this, Rosie's Bar, and it passed from Rosie to her daughter, who just became Rosie for continuity's sake. I don't think her name, maybe neither of their names were actually Rosie. I don't know, but it basically like, okay, you're Rosie now. So it's like they added in that, all right, maybe this is just the retcon for this actor change is just like, all right, whoever is running the bar is Rosie. Let's just leave it at that.
Alan Alda really said this? This doesn't sound very, like, in the 70s, people reused actors all the time. Did someone actually confront him and say, how come Rosie's in there? But
I think he was pointing it out as he was doing in his memoir or whatever, was talking about the show and was talking about Rosie's Bar and was said like that there were different actors. And he was happy to learn that it's based on, in reality, Rosie's Bar had a couple of different proprietors. And so he was like, oh, it's like that.
Got it.
Not that he was a continuity stickler, but he was, he was
like
just happy
Cheers.
To kind of, yes.
He wasn't called Coach Cheers. So,
Coach's Bar.
Yeah.
Eileen Saki also was in a handful of other things that we've seen, and the one that tickled my fancy, she played Dr. Fujimoto in Splash. So she was in MASH and Splash, the MASH and Splash connection. I think she might be the only one who was in both that I can. I could be wrong. I didn't do that math. The MASH Splash math, but.
I'm surprised she was only in 8 episodes as Rosie. Or it sounds like Rosie was only in like a total of 10 episodes altogether, but I remember her as a character, but
12.
that show ran for... But still, the show ran for 12 years or something with...
Right. So it's like 1 year. It's like...
Yeah.
It's like Q, almost, Q probably was in a few more episodes than that, but...
Yeah.
A recurring character, and I think they would talk about Rosie's Bar, or you would see maybe Rosie's Bar sometimes when you didn't see Rosie.
Right.
But yes, Eileen Saki, born in 1943 in Japan, and then came to America to be an actor, and ends up playing a character playing a Korean character in the Korean a TV show about the Korean War while a war is going on in Vietnam. It's a complicated tangle of U.S.
She's like the trifecta. She's born during the World War II in a show about the Korean War while the Vietnam War was going on. Wow.
Yeah. So.
Well, we honor another veteran of the television
I believe the other I think one of the other actresses has passed on, but there is one Rosie remaining, I believe. Could be wrong.
The remaining Rosie.
The remaining Rosie. Remember last time there was the one survivor of why does all my stuff revolve around war? But last time I was talking about the one survivor of the Pearl Harbor bombing, and this time I'm going to talk about I've got one Rosie remaining. So I'm going to inject a little ray of hope into each one of these.
Nice. That's a good way of looking at it.
There you go.
I'm going to tackle a historical death this week, turning back the pages of history to May 2nd, 1972. Yes, we all remember where we were when we heard that J. Edgar Hoover, lifelong director of the FBI, was when he kicked the bucket. And I'm going to speak a bit disrespectfully about him because I feel like J. Edgar Hoover was falls more on the monster side of history, so I don't mind being a bit more... Anyway, let's get into the details about him. J. Edgar Hoover, born in 1895, back 2 centuries ago.
Wow.
And he got into a career as law in 1917 at the outbreak of World War I, another war connection.
There we go.
President Wilson appointed him the head of the Alien Enemies Bureau. Doesn't that sound... it was from a different time where we could just outright state that people were enemies as opposed to just kind of like,
Right, yeah.
More vague, vague things.
Relations or something we would call them. I don't know what... let's
enemy
pocket
relations.
that term, though.
Enemy resources. And after that, he did so good at it in 1919. The war is over, but now we're all concerned about domestic problems here at home. And so he became the head of the Radical Division. He went from Alien Enemies Bureau to the Radical Division. It's like
these are all really cool. These sound like black and white comics from the 80s, late 80s.
Yes. This is when the infamous Palmer raids happened, where basically at this point they were targeting socialists, anarchists, communists, and deported many, many people. He did such a good job at that. He was appointed the head of the proto-FBI in 1935. The FBI is formed. J. Edgar Hoover is right there to run it. And their number one priority during those times, communism.
Sure.
They were trying to stamp out the communist menace and...
See also all the wars I just talked about.
Yes, exactly. One of the noteworthy things about... Hoover is that he was very not eager to prosecute the American mafia. He denied it.
He wasn't. Wasn't J. Edgar Hoover?
No, he was not. He was very reluctant. He said there's no such thing. Organized crime is a myth, and there's been speculation that the reason, and this is during the 30s. We're talking about the Al Capone. This is a classic. The classic, he might have been in the 20s. Anyway, but, it's still prohibition and all that. And so there were some allegations that the mafia had some dirt on Mr. J. Edgar Hoover. And which was doubly ironic because that kind of became J. Edgar Hoover's calling card. At one point, he had what was called possibly the largest collection of pornography in America. And a lot of it was secret footage of the rich and famous in, dalliances that he would use to kind of strong-arm people into. He basically had this kind of leverage over so many people, including presidents. When Nixon was in the White House, he wanted to get rid of Hoover, but he has too much dirt on everyone. And you can imagine, if Nixon's worrying about dirt, it must be some really bad dirt.
You doing a detergent commercial?
His hands were tied. Some other people who were targeted by J. Edgar Hoover, who we know, John Lennon, Muhammad Ali, and he was blackmailing Martin Luther King Imagine which side of history you're on when you're famous for being the person who blackmailed Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
So, finally, he started the FBI in 1935, and he was in the saddle until he died. No one could kick him out because he was so entrenched and had so much dirt on everyone. So, here you go, J. Edgar Hoover. And, after he died, there was tons, not even before he died, there were allegations about his personal life that he was dallying in things that he would have publicly condemned at the time. And so
that tends to be the case. The people who are the strongest opposition to what they term to be, things that are illegal or immoral. The people who are the loudest about it are usually the ones who are doing it and overcompensating.
It seems to happen a lot.
Yeah,
but yes. So let's give a tip of the hat and let's give a tip of the hat to J. Edgar Hoover.
Yeah, there you go.
Our last honoree of the day.
Who, you might not know this. No, this might not be in your notes. Might not be in the literature here, but Hoover. Who took over from him? Who was the second director of the FBI? Do you know?
I think it was a guy called Pat Gray. It's actually were you going to say something about it, or?
No. I just...
yeah, it's actually kind of funny because it's one of those great twists of history. Hoover dies. Nixon gets to appoint a new FBI director. He doesn't want to appoint the second in command. He doesn't want to appoint Hoover's second in command, Mark Feltz, because he's like, I'm just going to be in the same boat. I want a new, fresh face. So he appoints this guy, Pat Gray. Mark Felt is not happy about this, and so he decides to start leaking information to reporters and would go on to infamy as the infamous Deep Throat, who eventually wound up bringing down the Nixon administration. So it's almost like Hoover was reaching from beyond the grave to pull down poor Tricky Dick.
Exactly. So, he's like the Palpatine of American 20th century American politics.
J. Edgar Hoover has returned. Wrong show.
But well, hopefully we've entertained you slightly. We will somehow return next week. I think we're going to keep doing these, and like we said last week, if there's somebody we missed, somebody you think we should have covered from this past week, let us know below in the comments if you're on YouTube. Otherwise, we're working on other ways to get in contact with us. But for right now, YouTube, and then hopefully we will meet you back here next week to give you another round of wrapping up, talking about the people who died.
Who died?